Hello, we are back live during Czech Star Wars Day for year 2021. As I said during the previous panels, it's very sad that during we cannot meet with all of you guys and girls and everyone. We cannot meet in the person, but at least there is at least one opportunity to meet with amazing actors, amazing artist with amazing uh, with all amazing people, the crew who touch the Star Wars legacy around the world. And I would like to thank you, Mr. Alanem Flyngem. Hello, Alan. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hello, Vlastimil. It's very, very nice to be here, and thank you very much for asking me.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Alan is the actor, singer, moderator, comedian. Did I miss something? Because there is because for because for British classic British school, you need to, let's say, grow up from theater and touch all of it, right?
Absolutely. I'm also a costume designer.
Costume designer. Sorry, I forget about this. Yeah, because
All right.
you was working even for royal family, right? It's correct.
That's true. Yes.
So it's very nice to have you here. Before we will touch the Star Wars, because let's say, who cares about Star Wars today? We will we will speak about your beginnings, about how you became the actor, about your first gigs in the industry, and we will finish with your roles in Star Wars Episode V and Episode VI. So first of all, as I mentioned, we already met in the Berlin, but during the time I was not aware that your first gig in the movie or in the entertainment, if I can call it like this, in entertainment industry, was the funeral of late Sir Winston Churchill. You was the singer during the funeral. It's correct. It's the correct.
That's correct. Yes. Yes. It all happened quite accidentally, as most things in my life have. I was well known as a singer as a child, and I had been on radio, and I was a little bit of a sweet little angel, very far from what I am now. And I was given a scholarship to one of the most famous choir schools in the world at Eton College. And I arrived there at the beginning of 1965. And at the time that I arrived, all the other boys were out of school. They were on holiday still from Christmas. And a call went out for a soloist to come in and sing at a church service. And that was all I was told. My understanding of English was very poor at the time. So they told me as little as I needed to know and could make me understand. And they gave me two pieces of music, which I already knew, luckily, sung in Latin. And I was taken by car into the centre of London. I knew nothing about where I was or what I was looking at. When we arrived at this huge cathedral, and I was pushed in through a side door. And I could hear music, and I could hear singing, I could hear all sorts of things going on, the service going on, and I was dressed like a good choir boy should be, in red with a white surplice on the top and my big white Eton collar digging into my neck. And then I was literally pushed by a finger out through a door into the cathedral itself. And I found myself literally coming through the door to be face to face with Sir Winston Churchill's catafalque with his coffin on top. It was huge, absolutely huge. And I sort of looked up at it, and this finger was still behind me, pushing me in my back like this, and turned me to the side. And I turned around, and I looked straight into the eyes of the Queen of England, and Prince Philip, Charles de Gaulle, and God knows, all the leaders and kings and queens of Europe and America, they're all there. And I recognized some of them, not all of them, but I recognized I was in a very strange and important place. And the music started for my first piece, and I'm not a person who suffers from nerves. I never have done. whether I was on stage or singing or acting, whatever. Nerves have never been a problem for me. So I just sang my first piece, and I went and sat down on a chair that had been provided for me. And I sat there through the rest of the service. And then I sang my last piece just before the end of the service. And then the soldiers came in to take Sir Winston Churchill's coffin away, which was absolutely enormous, because he was inside a lead coffin, which was then surrounded by a wooden coffin. And it weighed an absolute ton. So it took 8 men to lift it. And they're all heaving and sweating and making terrible noises. And I was thinking, oh, God, I hope they don't drop it. I hope they don't drop it. And it went out. And before the Queen left, she came up and shook my hand and thanked me. And Prince Philip came up and thanked me. And I was very forward, because you're not supposed to speak to them unless they speak to you, but he spoke to me, so I answered him in German. So he spoke to me in German, as his German was very, very good. He was educated some time in Germany. Then that was the first of my meetings with the royal family. I got through it all. I was given a bag of coins, which had been specially made to commemorate his funeral, which I still have. I've never taken them out. I've never tried to spend them. And I went back to Eton and settled in. I was there for the next 3 years. And having left there, finally, I started to get an education and a better knowledge of English, and met all sorts of normal people. And yeah, I know. And I started to get introduced to doing film work, because in Britain at that time, after the war, right through till the late 60s, we had something here called the Children's Film Foundation. And their responsibility was to make films for children. And they were shown on a Saturday morning cinema club all around the country. So there were films and films and films, hundreds of films made every single year. Not at all expensive, as you can imagine. And they needed children. So I kept on getting pushed through, and I found myself in front of cameras all over the place, delivering lines in stories that I had no knowledge of, because they never gave me the scripts, just my lines. And then finally I gave up on that, so I was getting too old, and I went to drama school here in London. And out of drama school, I then went into doing proper film, as I call it, and theatre, and a bit of opera, a bit of oratorio work as a singer. And that's how I carried on for the next 45 years.
So it was kind of child dream to become the actor, because as you mentioned, you, let's say, jump in this industry pretty young. So it was something you said, okay, this is amazing, I want to be part of it, or like, yeah, it's fun and probably it's possible, let's say, to be creative in this type of work, or what drive you to become, let's say, the actor?
As I've said, I don't suffer from nerves, and I'm a very relaxed, laid back sort of person, which absolutely annoys some people to death. I cannot be pushed to do things unless I want to do them. So I just went along with the sequence of things as they happened. And as you get known, you get asked for more. If you do a good job, and because I was never nervous in front of a camera and I could take direction, I was constantly being asked for doing more and more and more. So eventually it led through to me working with the same directors and the same assistant directors and casting agents, but they were doing ordinary films for ordinary cinema, or for international cinema in those days, and for the BBC and various other television production companies. So it was a natural progression, and being laid back, I just went wherever I was led. And I was lucky, just very, very lucky. My whole career has been based on luck.
So let's say
some talent.
So you are like the leaf in the water or in the wind, which is just going through it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so but you was part of a lot of amazing and let's say legendary cinema pieces, like
Yeah.
American Werewolf in the London, which is
Yes.
pretty known piece of the cinema, or Clash
Yeah.
of the Titans even.
Uh,
Regarding, do you have some nice memory about spending time on the sets during those classic movies? For example, do you recall it like, oh my God, this is amazing thing, it will be legendary, everyone will be talking about it? Or for you, it was like daily job?
well, it was like a daily job in many ways. And as with many film productions that are not filmed in a studio, at least initially, American Werewolf was shot all around London. You see scenes of London throughout the whole story. So I was engaged to be in the scene that takes place in Trafalgar Square, in the center of London, where the werewolf transforms when a policeman comes up to stop him making a nuisance of himself. And Jenny Agutter, the actress, is there as well. And the two of them are arguing with one another. And I found myself slap bang in the middle of them. And the reason I was put slap bang in the middle of them was because I could look at camera, even though I wasn't central to the scene, because I could see what was happening behind the camera. And the reason that was important was because the film company had no permission to film where we were. So we arrived in minibuses. We all jumped out of the minibus. The camera was set up immediately. Everybody got into positions they were told they had to get to. And then we started filming. And a joke of it, of course, is that one of the actors in the scene plays a policeman with the obvious black helmet and black uniform.
Like Bobby, like classic Bobby.
Absolutely. And so nobody was taking any notice of him. And then from my point of view, I thought, this is very strange. Is he breeding in the background? Because I can see two more Bobbies walking up. And of course, they were coming up because they had not been told that there was a film company and they wanted to know if we had permission. So I was in the middle and I was going like this. I had to alert the director, the assistant directors, and the camera operator that there was danger just the other side behind them. And of course, it became quite funny. And so I started laughing. I could not help myself. I just started laughing because it was becoming a farce for which the British are very famous. And so I ended up playing half the scene with my hand over my mouth because it was taking away from the dramatic action that was taking place between the two main actors and the policeman actor. Anyway, we didn't get arrested. We managed to get the scene, and just before the police tried to step in front of the camera to stop it all, we all ran and got back into the minibuses and started driving off again, looking for other places to stop and jump out and shoot more stuff. So it was just, it was like a comedy of errors, I suppose you could say. It was very, very silly. And that was my whole involvement in that film, to be honest. I wasn't even supposed to be there. It was just one of those things that my agent said, well, I can get you a day here and I can give you a day there, which is often what happens. And so I said, yes, fine. Tell me where to go and I'll be there. And I was. So 5 o'clock in the morning in the rain.
So it's like golden age of the cinema, because probably in current time, or let's say even without the COVID restrictions, everything, those kind of stunts and those kind of, let's say, black shooting are probably, you can be very dangerous, I assume.
It can be, of course, especially if something has things like stunts involved, or they have special vehicle chases or animals involved. Very unpredictable. These things have to be well planned. But in those days, it was like guerrilla filming. So we were actually just jumping in, doing what we had to do, and jumping out of it again.
Yeah.
And go on.
And I would like to move a little bit to the Star Wars, correct? Because he was in the Star Wars. So Star Wars are, let's say, still a hot topic for a lot of people who are watching right now. And I want to ask you, because in '77, when Star Wars were released, I assume a lot of your colleagues or people you knew was already part of it.
Oh yes. Yeah.
How it went for you to see success of such a story? Even I assume you saw it in the British cinema. It's correct, my assumption.
Eventually, yes. I knew very little about it. There was a lot of talk about it in the business because the whole first production of A New Hope, as it became to be known, but was just then known as A Star Wars or The Star Wars.
Yeah.
They kept on running out of money, and it was well spoken about in the industry, saying, if you get a job offer from them, don't do it because they keep on running out of money. You may not get paid. So there was this cautionary feel, but nevertheless, they managed to work their way through it. And
so I assume even there were like rumors they will put you in some strange things. They are strange lines. They are putting you in like it's a lot of strange things, and you would not probably feel good about it, etc. It's correct.
Well, that's true. So I was not keen. I wasn't keen to work on that film. I was already in 2 other films whilst that one was shooting. So I was being held in continuity, which means that I had to go back to those films and I had to step into the roles I was playing and look exactly the same as I had before. So I couldn't have my hair cut. I couldn't lose my moustache or my beard, which I had, because they'd already featured in those films, and therefore I had to look exactly the same. So when my agent then asked me if I would like to do a couple of days' work on The Empire Strikes Back, number 5, I was not too keen. I said, well, you do realize I'm in continuity, therefore I've got to go to these 2 other films. He said, well, it's only a couple of days' work, and besides, you're going to wear a helmet. You're going to wear a helmet that will cover your face and your neck, and you'll have armor on. And I'm sort of looking at him and saying, what on earth am I supposed to do? He said, you're something called a stormtrooper. I said, okay, as long as I'm not going to be seen, I don't mind at all. So I turned up at the studio and was forced into a stormtrooper outfit. They were all exactly the same size. Didn't matter what size the actors that went into them were. They were all the same size, and you had to make yourself fit. So I managed to struggle into one, and I proceeded then to the set which I was supposed to shoot on with the others who were all called that day. None of us knew what we were going to be doing, and the set that we went into on this studio was very high up. It was about 6 meters off the ground. Huge construction with steel girders and scaffolding all the way around. And there was only one staircase which actually went up onto the set, and we couldn't get up it because it was blocked by the camera operators, lenses, and equipment, and the dolly for the camera, tracking. There were technicians there. Everybody was on this staircase, and we, who were supposed to be in front of the camera, couldn't get in front of the camera. So they came up with the idea of putting up a double extension ladder around the other side of the set. So we were all in our stormtrooper outfits with our helmets. We had to put our helmets on and start climbing these ladders to get up to the top, 6 meters up, which was a bit of a frightening thing because we couldn't see where we were going. And all this armor, this plastic armor, was biting at every joint into the skin. It was really, really quite painful. And we finally got up there, and we were assigned positions, and they asked who was equity member, which means you're a professional actor. And I said, yes, I am. So I was positioned very close to Darth Vader and Boba Fett. So there was me on one side and a guy called Ralph Morse, lovely guy, on the other side. And the action was the carbonite chamber scene, where Han Solo is brought in and held by the Ugnaughts and then descends down and comes back up. in a fridge door, as they call it nowadays. And so I was there because I was supposed to coordinate with the actors. So I was also working with Harrison Ford some of the time. And it was all fine. It was absolutely fine. But 2 days went by and they said, well, we haven't got it. We need to do more. And so I said, well, I don't think I'm going to be available. I said, besides which, I'm anonymous because I'm in this outfit. And they said, yeah, but you seem to be able to do what we want. You know, some of the guys are not really that sharp, should we say. They're not really understanding what we're trying to get. And so, well, you'll have to phone my agent and ask. And my agent said, yes, keep him as long as you like. It was not the answer I was expecting from my agent. 7.5 weeks later, I finished. But in that 7.5 weeks, I was in the carbonite chamber. Then when they were turning around and shooting on the principal actors, and we were not needed for the scene, we were shoved into wardrobe and put into other outfits. So I then became a snow trooper. I became a Hoth rebel. I became a Hoth technician. I worked on second unit with George Lucas directing us, running up and down corridors, corridor after corridor after corridor, in all different directions, to and from the camera all the time. 30 times of action each time, going each way. And I was stupid enough to ask him what it was we were doing wrong, that we need to do it so many times. He said, well, I'll know when I see. I said, what, sorry, I don't understand. He said, well, I'll know what I want when I see it. I thought, well, that's one way of saying something. In other words, he didn't know what he wanted at all. And when we got to the final chase down one of these corridors, as stormtroopers in this case, he finally said to the continuity woman who was keeping all the records with the camera and the lighting and everything else, he said, print take number 3. We'd done it 32 times. And he chose take number 3. So okay. Lucky we had the helmets on, because my face at that time was like thunder. I was so hot and so sweaty.
There are some rumors about George Lucas when he was directing Episode 4 that he was asking the actors, like he took the shoot and after said, okay, do it again and better. And they ask, oh, what do you mean better? Just better, do it better.
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing happened. It didn't matter who it was. The magic came in the monitor. So he was watching a monitor at that time, and he imagined that that was the cinema screen, and it was only what he saw there. That's where the magic was happening. But it was such a small screen. So he couldn't really see what was happening. He couldn't see the nuances of things that were developing, or the fact that we were sweating and slipping and falling over and breaking our armor, and having to be repaired with white camera tape, like gaffer tape, here wherever there were cracks appearing, which he came to regret us doing in the end. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it was the same when I was a snow trooper. We were accompanying Vader, and we were invading the Hoth ice tunnels. The sets were incredibly hot, as was the carbonite chamber, because all that steam you see is not what they use nowadays called honey smoke, which is cold. This was actual steam, boiling water, which was circulating in pipes under our feet and jetting up into our costumes, covered over with sea salt. So we were getting sea salt concentrations coming up inside our costumes, and we were getting rashes and cuts, and it was very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. It's like being in a sauna wearing a plastic suit of armor hour after hour. And I just carried on doing what I had to do, basically. And then when the times when I was a Hoth technician or a Hoth rebel, running through the same places or through the big hangar, then at least I didn't have armor on. It was very comfortable, and that was fine. It was absolutely fine. But I had no idea where it was placed in the film. None of us did. None of us knew the story, although we kept on being told bits and pieces about films to come. So we heard synopses of films that were possibly going to be made sometime in the future. So when it came to the prequels, we knew about the prequels even when we were shooting The Empire Strikes Back, which was the second film actually made. We knew about all the prequels. We knew about live action TV series. We knew about cartoon series. We knew about spin-offs for the principal characters. They were all spoken about, but everybody was supposed to be silent. We were supposed to be not speaking to anybody that might be from the press. But it was all quite generally known. And I knew most of the technicians on the film anyway, because I'd worked with them on other productions, and some of them were actually friends of mine. So I got to learn far more than I should have, I suppose.
So from 2 days on the set, it became 7.5 weeks.
That's right. That's right. And then I finished, and I phoned my agent, and he said, well, there's a bit of a problem with the 2 other films. And I said, go on, tell me. He said, well, one of them, they've finished and they've cut you out of the film. I said, am I getting paid? He said, yes. I said, well, I'm not worried about it then. He said, the other one, they still want you to go back. They've actually finished the film, they've wrapped it, and all the actors have gone home, but they'll get a second unit together to shoot the pieces that they need from you to finish off your role. I said, fine. So I went and did that. I did 8 days of it solidly, 12 hours a day with this unit, just doing dialogue against one small piece of background or another, and in a small studio. And that was fine, absolutely fine. But it didn't make me very popular.
So how it was feeling for you to, because you was on the set, you seen how it went, how the direction was, because I assume you went to the cinema to see episode 5. So
no, I didn't.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
No, I was busy working when that film came out.
But you saw it later, I assume. Did you? Okay. Did you saw episode 5?
Years later.
Years later.
Years later. Because I started to do conventions. I was asked to start doing conventions around about 2009. Now that's what, 30 years later? Yes. And I was doing panels, like in Berlin. I was doing a panel with people sitting in the audience asking us questions, etc., sitting up on the stage. And news came through that I needed to know more of what I was talking about. And so Lucasfilm sent me a set of films on VHS video. Okay. So I actually got to see the films then, never in a cinema. I sat down and I watched them on television so that I knew what bits I was in and where they related to the film. Because otherwise they thought I might start talking absolute rubbish. So that's how I got to see the films that I've been in, but it was 30 years later.
And what was your emotions to see yourself in the costume in that movie after all those years, and knew that there are huge fandom around the world who cherish those characters, who even cherish those stormtroopers in those scenes, who cherish the franchise? How was the feeling for you?
Well, I found it quite extraordinary, to be honest, because I'd appeared in so many films before those days, on The Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. I'd been in so many films that there had never been the, here's a nice English expression, hoo-ha. There was not this great big hoo-ha about the films and how famous they were and the people that appeared. That sort of fandom had not really ever occurred before. So to me, it was a bit of a revelation. I was a little bit blasé watching the films because I had vague remembrances of things that I'd done. Vague, because there were things happening. Like, oh, that's me there. Oh, but we didn't shoot that with that. That's in a completely different part of the film to where we expected it to be. So I went through it that way, and I learned what I had been subjected to and what it looked like finally, which came in very handy, I must say. Thank you, Lucasfilm. When I came to sit on panels thereafter, I did know what I was talking about. And some of the actors who were around me just laughed a lot of the time when I said, you know, I remember working with you. They'd say to me, I remember working with you. I said, don't think we ever worked together. This happened with Jeremy Bullock. Jeremy came up to me at one of my first conventions. He looked at my name on the front of the table, leaned across, shook my hand, said, oh, it's been a long time. I haven't seen you for years. I said, I'm sorry, who are you? He said, I'm Jeremy Bullock. I played Boba Fett. I said, you weren't Boba Fett in the scenes that I shot. He said, shh, don't tell anybody. Because Jeremy was doing theatre work and he was replaced. He had other people who came in and deputized for him. So quite often it was not Boba Fett that we all know and love.
Yeah, like Mr. Morton, I think, is one of them.
Yes. Oh, yes. And even his stand-ins were getting dressed up. So Peter Roy was doing a little bit of it, and Alan Harris, who played Bosk, he also did some of the scenes. And in fact, when Prince Charles visited the set of Star Wars and he was shown the Boba Fett suit in development, it was just a white suit at that time with the rocket launcher on him, or flamethrower, whatever it was. That was Alan Harris. That wasn't Jeremy Bullock. He wasn't available. So unfortunately, they set it all up and put it onto Alan Harris's hand, and Prince Charles came up and pressed the button, which nobody had expected. And this fire came whooshing out and could have incinerated the heir to the throne of England. But luckily, they got away with it because they hadn't tested it until that moment. And Prince Charles just went, boom.
he pressed correct buttons.
Alan was explaining to him what it all was, you know. So he just went, oh, really? Press the button.
During the scene in the Cloud City, as you mentioned, there was Jeremy Bullock, Joe Morton, and another actors who performed as Boba Fett. There was the late David Prowse as well as the Darth Vader. Yes. And two heroes of the rebellion, of the Rebel Alliance, late Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia and Harrison Ford as Han Solo. So as you was part of the scene, do you remember the time when it came to the dialogue between Leia and Han, and the Harrison improvised his line?
Yes. His line as written was, I love you too. And that's what they did. They rehearsed that and then they shot it. And then they repeated it and they asked for him to shoot again and again and again. And eventually Harrison Ford got annoyed and just said, I know. When she said, I love you, he just said, I know. The director said, great, print, I like that one. But Harrison was like that. He was not overly friendly on the set. To him, it was a job, and he wasn't that comfortable amongst other people that he didn't know. So he was quite retiring. Carrie was friends with everybody, just everybody. And she was the sweetest person and very, very funny. And like her mother, she swore like a trooper.
Did you meet with Miss Fisher lately after the shooting? Did you have the opportunity to meet her during some reunions or conventions?
No. I never did. No, unfortunately. Life is very strange in the film industry. It's very, very small, the industry. It seems like it must be huge, but you're talking about possibly 1,000 people working on all the films that are in Britain and Europe, and another 2,000 working in America and Canada. And you constantly, you're working with each other, or you're passing each other like ships in the night. So I never got to see her again, not to speak to. We were never on another production together. So, or when I was on Return of the Jedi, she wasn't, of course, in those scenes. So I never got to see her. She was in the same film, but we never saw each other on the same day. Yeah. She was a very, very sweet person.
So I assume you are keeping her warm memories from the scene you did in the Cloud City, I assume.
Yes. Well, it was, a lot of it is a blur, is really a blur, because as I said, when we did these shots, unless we were principal actors, we were not given a script. Every single thing we wore, or everything we handled in our roles, we were given in the morning and we had to sign for them. And at the end of the day, we had to give them back, and they were signed for as being taken back. We were never allowed to have a script that we could actually walk out of the studio with to read. That was for the principal actors, because they didn't want the press, the newspapers, or the television companies to find out what the storyline was. But then Dave Prowse, in the end, blew it and told everybody everything, because he was so annoyed with George Lucas that not being able to shoot the scenes of him with his helmet off, which he'd promised him he would do. So it was a revelation for Dave that he'd been passed over, and that his own voice was not going to be used, but it was Earl Jones who was going to do it. So things were a bit sticky with that situation. And I'd known Dave from before the Star Wars days, because we used to train at the same gym. He was a bodybuilder. He competed in Mr. Universe, Dave. He also appeared on television as the Green Cross Code Man, doing these commercials, telling children how to cross the road safely, and visiting schools in this very strange superhero suit. But I knew him from those days at that gym, which was owned by Henry Cooper, who was old boxing heavyweight champion. And it was his gym on the Old Kent Road, South London, where we used to both train at the same time. So I knew Dave, and I knew Dave's dresser, who was one of my best friends. And so I was constantly hearing about Dave and what Dave was doing on the films, and how he kept walking into walls and doors and into bits sticking out of sets because he couldn't see where he was going. But then none of us could see where we were going when we had the helmets on. The camera operator at one point complained that whenever any of us stood in front of the camera, looking at us, he could see himself reflected in the lenses of the helmets, including Darth Vader's. So somebody in the wardrobe department, not my friend, but one of the others, had this bright idea during the lunch period to polish all the lenses with metal polish, abrasive metal polish. So eventually they got rid of the reflection, but they also got rid of the ability to be able to see through the lens. So Dave was like a walking time bomb. He never knew where he was going. And my friend, who was his dresser, went to a train station and borrowed a porter's trolley on which luggage would be carried. And Dave used to stand on it and lean back, and the dresser would push him onto set, so he didn't walk into walls and doors. And he'd have his helmet on because he mustn't be seen by any member of the public. So it's all very silly, the whole thing, really. But that's how secretive everybody had to be about filming.
Yeah. And your Star Wars work, as you mentioned, didn't just finish with Episode V. You appeared that time with your own face in Episode VI. And
Yes.
I know there is a very nice story about it, how it that happened. Can you tell us?
Well,
Can you tell us to our people who are watching right now, please?
yes, yes. Well, after I finished on Empire Strikes Back, I did a few more films, but I also decided that I would retrain, stop being an actor, and start being a technician, because I had the basics of tailoring already and costume design already in my system. So I decided to take it up professionally, and I went and worked at the Royal National Theatre in London, and I did my training with them. And I was offered a film along with one of the designers I was working with in the theatre. And we were to be making the first film for Britain's Channel 4 in a series called Films on 4. But the call came and they said, we need you to go to Elstree Studios because that's where our production office is. We're not shooting there, we're going to be shooting in Wales, across the other side of the country. So on the appointed day, which was the 8th of February, 1982, still got it in my brain, I went to the studio and I found the production office and I signed my contract. And I was leaving and I was stopped by the first assistant director on Return of the Jedi. He was standing outside the studio they were shooting in at the time, smoking heavily, which was unusual for him. And he caught sight of me. He said, Alan, come over here. I said, well, I'm sorry, I've got to go. I've got to get to Wales by tomorrow morning. He said, no, I need you to do me a favor. And I thought, oh God, I know what Star Wars favors are. I've been through this before. I said, well, what is it? He said, we've had an actor who's been on set all this morning and we have a problem. We just cannot get him to say the one line in the story that we need him to say. We cannot say it. I said, well, why not? He said, well, George Lucas cast him from a photograph. He's a friend of George Lucas's. And so he was chosen because he looked the part. And they flew him over from California to do this one line. I said, and he said, well, we had to send him to Western Costumes in LA to get him measured. And then they made the outfit for him in London so that when he arrived, it was all custom built for him to put on. I said, and when he got in front of the camera, he couldn't say anything because he had a stutter. So every time he had to say, sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shields, he said, and he was sweating, trying to get this done. And they'd worked with him all morning just to try and get this one line out of him. And of course, the anxiety grew and grew and grew within him until eventually he was just like a solid wreck, sweaty wreck. So they asked him to go to his dressing room, take off the uniform, which they said they were going to dry and press for another attempt in the afternoon, and he should relax, which is at the point I walked past on the outside. So I said, look, whatever it is, I said, it's got to be quick. I'll do you the favor, but it's got to be quick. They said, oh, we won't need you more than 10, 15 minutes. I said, I've heard this before, you know. They said, well, just go to the wardrobe. I said, oh, right. Okay. So I went in and they were all saying, what the hell are you doing here? Because they all knew me. I said, I'm supposed to be replacing the guy upstairs, the sweaty guy upstairs who's got a stutter. I said, I don't think his uniform's going to fit you. So, well, we've got to try. And so they brought this uniform out, which literally was rank. It stank of sweat and nervous sweat. And so I took my clothes off and I started to get the stuff on. I got the trousers on, but I couldn't do the front up. And then they brought me the jacket, which fastened up the side like that. And I tried to get up and I said, it's never going to go. It's never going to go. I said, what size is this guy? He said, oh, I think he's about a 42 inch. That's a size 52 continental. I said, well, he's a 42 inch chest. I'm a 58. So I'm a 68 jacket. I like that. Oh. I said, well, we've got to try. So they wrestled me into this suit. And if you look at the pictures of me, I don't know if I've got one of them here at all.
I'm showing it to our audience. I have it already prepared.
If you look at the picture, as this jacket is done up down here, it's gaping like this between each of the hooks. And the sleeves are so tight that they're just literally, I'm standing like that. I can't move. So I said, well, this is a bit difficult. I can't breathe. They said, well, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. The jacket's covering up the front of the trousers, so nothing's hanging out. So they took me on set, and the set, as you know, was this sunken well in which technicians were sitting at monitors and flicking switches. And they put me in this well, and director was up top, and another couple of actors. And I said, now you're going to deliver your lines to these two actors. And I looked up and I thought, I know you. I know you. Think of your name. I can't think of your name. Why can't I think of your name? Anyway, I thought, put that out of your mind. They told me what my line was. No script. Just, here's your line. Can you remember it? Okay, shout it a dozen times as loud as you can. And they'll record it as a wild track if we need to redub you or anything. So I did, and I was trying to shout and said, there's not much force in your voice. I said, I can't breathe in this jacket. I can't take a breath. Every time I move, something is popping. There are stitches popping in every seam. I can hear them popping. I said, oh, we'll get through this. It'll be fine. So your action is with your back to camera, which is up here behind you. And you are looking over this guy's shoulder. I said, I can't bend forward. I promise you, I can't bend forward. They said, we'll bend from the hips and keep your back straight. So I was like a wooden doll, like this. And my arms were still straight down by my sides. And he said, relax. I said, I am relaxed as much as I possibly can be in a straitjacket. I feel like the madman of Alcatraz. I said, no, okay, we'll go with this. We'll give you the word action. And on action, you stand up straight, you turn on a dime, and you look straight into camera, and beside the camera will be the actor to whom you've got to say the line as in a panicked, loud voice, sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shields. So, with an American accent. Sure, okay. So, came to do action. I bent over and I could hear this creaking sound of all the stitches being stretched because I was getting very hot. So the suit was starting to dry out and shrink onto my body. I said action and I stood up fast and stupidly, I took a deep breath. Because as I took a deep breath, I turned and faced the camera and shouted, sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shields. And as I said it, the back of the jacket went rip all the way up the back. And so they said, cut. How was that? And the sound said, well, I got this terrible sound. As he got problems, it sounded like he was farting. I said, no, I wasn't. It's the back of the jacket is split all the way up the back. Well, how is it for the camera? And I knew the focus puller. And his father was the operator. And he looked at me and I looked at him, hopefully. He said, I think there's a hair in the gate, which is an expression, which means there is either literally a hair that's got in front of the lens inside the camera, which then shows up on the film. You sometimes see it sort of flickering across the image as it's being projected. Or it means that he got the focus wrong and it's too soft focus. And in this case, he'd got the focus wrong. So he's saying, there's a hair in the gate. So I said, okay, well, give it 5 minutes. Okay with you to hang on a second, we'll do it again. I said, you won't. So why? I said, my jacket is split all the way up, so I can't start with my back to camera. Oh, well, that is a problem. You have to be in this position. It's very is very certain in the script that you must be away, looking away from camera over and turn around and panicked. You say this thing because the action that follows is then wham, bang, bang, as this A-wing comes through the glass of the bridge and everything explodes and you get killed. I said, oh, great. I get a starring role and they kill me off after one line. Everybody's burst out laughing. I say, well, I can't give you the time. I'm sorry. I did explain. I'm doing this as a favor. I have to go. They said, oh, we'll see what we can do with the focus when we get it to the labs. And as far as the sound's concerned, guys will have to find somebody to dub you. I said, that's fine by me. I don't mind at all. In the end, they used my voice. They managed to clean it up enough. But I went back to the wardrobe and took off this jacket, which was literally hanging in pieces. And because they were fighting to get the sleeves off me, etc. And I was leaving, hot and bothered. They hadn't even given me time to wash. And as I was leaving the studio, the assistant director came up to me and said, you've got to go upstairs. They need you in the production office. I said, I am in such a hurry. I really can't do this. He said, no, you've got to go up there. George wants to see you. And I thought, oh my God. Oh my God. So I went upstairs and I went into the production office and they said, he's in there, indicating a door. Just knock on the door and go in. He's expecting you. So I went in, I knocked and went in, and he looked up and he said, Alan, haven't seen you for a few years. I said, no, and I wasn't expecting to see you today either. He said, well, I gather you've done me a huge favor. I said, well, that's questionable because there were problems in doing this. I mean, we've got the shot, but I couldn't repeat it. There was soft focus and there was background sounds on the sound. He said, I'm sure we can do something with it. I'm so grateful to you. I said, thank you very much. Well, you're very aware. I said I'd do it as a favor. So it's nice to see you again. I must go. He said, whoa. You can't go yet. You have to sign a contract for me. I said, but I'm not engaged on the film. He said, that doesn't make any difference. You've spoken. Your face will be on camera. You will be featured. And you will be delivering a line, which is in the script. Therefore, I need you to sign a contract. I've written a contract, he said, ink. I had no idea what the importance of the green ink was. He said, so I'll get them to photocopy this in the office and you can have the green ink version, which is the original, and I'll keep the photocopy, but you've got to sign this. I said, okay, what is it? He said, you are assigning all your rights throughout the notice to Lucasfilm. I said, you mean it's going to be shown on other planets, in other galaxies? He said, no, that's just the phraseology we use in Hollywood. I said, no, I was aware of it. I was just being sarcastic. He said, I thought you were. And so I signed the contract and I said, well, I must go now. I'm starting a new film tomorrow morning, which is how you caught me, because I was in the studio just to sign my contract and I've got to get to Wales for tomorrow morning. First thing. He said, oh, hold on. And he took out an envelope from his drawer and he said to the production office, can I have that copy? And got the copy and he folded it up and he put it in this envelope. He said, here you are. He said, well, thank you very much. Now I must go. He said, there's something else in there, but I don't want you to look at it until you get out in the street. And, this is turning into another one of those cinematic farces, stupid comedy film. I said, very well, thank you very much. Can I go now? He said, yes. I said, well, good luck with the rest of the shoot. Bye-bye. And I rushed out, said goodbye to everybody on my way out who I knew. And I got outside the studio. The studio in Elstree is on a big roundabout, at one end of a Roman road. And as you know, Roman roads are straight. The very far end, 2 kilometers further down the road, is the train station I have to get get back to London. So I went outside and I was on the roundabout and I just opened up the envelope and I felt people's eyes on me. So I turned around and there was this block of offices, which isn't there anymore. And that's where the production offices were. And I could see everybody in the production office up on the second floor, looking down at me, waiting, looking at me, all at the windows. I thought, this is strange. And I looked along, and another window further on was George Lucas at his window. So I sort of opened it up and I pulled it out, and there was the contract. And I said, okay. And then I saw there's another piece of paper, and as I pulled it out, it was a check. It was a check for a very big amount of money, a very, very big amount of money. And they said, when I spoke to my friends in the production office much later on, they said, it was like you were in a Buster Keaton. You seemed to jump in the air, your legs were cycling like mad, and you hit the ground running, and you were gone. I said, I needed to get to that bank and get it in there. So I ran the entire 2 kilometers to the other end of the street, which is where the bank was. It wasn't my bank. But I went and I said, I need to get this cleared into my account. And they said, what's your account? I said, I'm with NatWest. And I said, we're not NatWest, we're Bucks. I said, I know, I'll pay the fee. I'll pay the extra fee. And it's got to go in quickly. So I'll pay another £5 if needs be to get it cleared. They said, well, what's this? What's the importance? I said, well, here's the check. Look, they said, signed by George Lucas. I said, yes. And I want it to be in my bank before he decides to cancel it. So I paid them £10 across the counter to clear it into my bank. And I got on the train, got back to London. My partner was at home saying, where the hell have you been? They've been calling from Wales, asking if you're on your way yet. I said, I'm going. I'll just throw some things in the bag and drive. And you'd think everything had finished with that. No. The worst of it was yet to come. I drove the 180 kilometers to Wales as I needed to, breaking every speed record I could to get there on time. And I went in, and the producer of this production was there. And he said, it's the elusive Mr. Fling. So you finally turned up. I said, yes, I'm terribly sorry. I got caught this morning, and I found myself late, and I had to get trains and pick up my car, and then said, yes, we've heard that you were busy this morning. Sort of realization is starting to dawn on me.
So people already knew. People already knew about it.
Well, this came out. He said, yes, I had a phone call this afternoon. I said, oh, yeah? Yes, I had a phone call from somebody calling himself George Lucas, who was asking if I could reshoot the scene you did this morning. I said, oh. He said, and I didn't believe it was George Lucas. I thought it was somebody pranking me. I thought it was a joke. So I told him to fuck off and put the phone down. You'll have to bleep out the words. So I thought, oh my God. Anyway, everybody was howling with laughter in the production office in Wales. And Glenda Jackson was there. She was going to be starring in this picture. And she said, oh, that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. I said, it's been a nightmare from start to finish. I wish I'd never. And I went downstairs, and I had a look around, and I said hello to my new staff. And they told me where the hotel was. So I went to the hotel. Next morning, I came in nice and bright and early. They said, your first fitting has arrived, because I'm there to do the costume design. This one. I said, oh, good. So the actors have arrived. My first actors arrived. Show him in. And the first actor who arrived was the actor I had delivered my line to the day before in Star Wars. It was Ken Colley. Ken looked at me and said, I knew you. I said, yeah, Ken, I know. I knew you too, but I couldn't remember. He said, no, I couldn't remember. It's been paining me. He said, what the fuck are you doing here? I said, well, what the fuck are you doing? And we've been saying this to each other now for 40 years, every time we meet. What the fuck are you doing here? And when I went to Berlin, I was taken in late. I was late to come in. And there was a camera crew outside, what they call a press kit, which is just a small one man with a camera with a sound boom on it, another guy holding the cables, etc., and directing him. And I thought, this is a bit weird. And they followed me in. And as they opened the double doors and I went in, I heard this voice from over somewhere in the hall. What the are you doing here? I thought, oh my God. So of course, I got my cue, so I have to reply. So I said, well, what the are you doing here? And that went out on German TV, the 6 o'clock news. So the joke then continues because every time I go and do German shows nowadays, they don't ask me to write down in German, "Sir, we've lost our British deflector shields." They ask me to write down, "And what the fuck are you doing here?" So there are all sorts of German autographed photos of me with that expression in German. It's followed me all the way through my signing career, I suppose, since 2009. So there you go.
That's amazing. Alan, we are at the end. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your incredible stories, because they are colorful as they can be. It's amazing. It was amazing to have you here, to spoke with you. And I hope we can meet on convention circuit as soon as possible again, if pandemic will allow us.
I hope so. Very soon, hopefully, everybody will be safe enough to travel. Thank you very much indeed. I've enjoyed myself.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.